You have landed on episode 100 of The Substance.
Oh, yeah.
Where we have aimed and will
Yes,
continue
sir.
to aim at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us each week as we engage the culture without the culture war, and occasionally, every 100 episodes ago, kind of celebrate.
Woo!
Let's get it.
What's going on, guys? Episode 100.
Man, it's going well. As you can hear, there are 3 hosts of The Substance.
Yes, yep. I'm Philip Marinello. When we break up the script here, I don't even have it fully in front of me because
Go
we've been
off
messing
script.
around here.
It's episode 100. Throw out the script.
I am
Let's go.
your host, listeners, and I'm Philip Marinello, joined by my partners for 100 episodes, Trevor Aiken,
So much work. Yo, what's going on, everybody?
and nearly 100 episodes, Vincent Edwards.
Let's get it. What's
Vince,
going on?
For a while, I remember because you joined us in 2.0, you're like, man, I feel like I haven't been hosting as much as you guys. But like, the fact of the matter is we did 12 episodes without you.
Yeah.
And now
True.
episode 100.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been doing this longer than the first iteration, so I'm
By it.
excited. And
Just a bit. Just
By
a bit.
far.
this is crazy, man. This is
By far.
crazy.
Yeah, it's
So-
it's exciting.
If you've been rocking with us a long time, thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. If you hate listen to the show, okay.
We appreciate you too.
Yeah, you
And we
came
love
back.
you too.
And if you're new here, welcome. Thank whoever shouted out the show to you. We appreciate that. But yeah, this is a bit of a special one. We're going to be looking back, looking forward, celebrating some. We're going to hear from some of our past guests throughout. A number of our past guests sent in recordings, answering a couple of questions here for us that we'll be peppering throughout the show here. And
Yeah.
we're going to have a good time here, guys.
It's gonna be dope. And I mean, I think it's appropriate what we're doing with the guests since it is, in fact, 2022, the year of the voicemail. So
It is. Hey, early
Yes.
Trev, tell the listeners about the year of the voicemail. We have had some,
Yeah.
but I don't know if everybody's quite caught on yet.
Yeah. All you have to do is dial the Substance's phone line 913-703-3883, and then you will get to our voicemail. The phone line will give you a generous 3 minutes.
Reaching out to guests to record answers to some questions. It cuts you off at 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So
So keep it concise. Let us know where you're calling from and who you are. And man, one group of people I would love to hear from is anyone who has been listening to the show from episode 1. I would love to hear from
who has gone back?
Yeah,
Because
anybody
we
who's
took a
gone
year
back.
and a half off. Like if you listened to the first 12, dug it, and then were amped when we got back on 13, like I'd certainly love to hear from you. I don't know how
Yeah.
many of those folks there are.
Yeah, people who listened in 2018 or
If you have
2019.
listened to the entire catalog, we would love to hear from you.
That would be
Absolutely. And one feature that we've
crazy.
actually put on www.thesubstancepod.com is actually a homepage banner, and it says 2022, the year of the voicemail. And if you click on that banner, it'll immediately go to our phone number. So absolutely 100%.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Let me open that up.
Yeah.
Nice work, Vince.
Get
Dang.
right to it. And so
That's why we're paying you the big bucks. Ooh, I see it there.
So you got a
it
smartphone.
takes works out of it, and just talk to us. Let us know how the substance is blessing you.
That's awesome, guys.
All right, so what are we doing first here, Trev? You want to introduce our first little look back segment?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the guests that we were most excited to have on really early on. I mean, we've been excited to get all our guests, but like this was super early. And in fact,
I think it was the first
Season one.
No,
season 1 was when we first started talking about having this guest
oh,
on.
correct.
the
I think you
show.
said this is when we had him on. I was like, you edit all the shows, you know that was.
No, we didn't have him in season 1.
He was
but-
one of the first guests we got for season 2 that wasn't a repeat guest. It was very
And-
exciting.
but we were super excited. One of my favorite podcasts is hosted by
Same.
this gentleman. Actually, 2, I would say, of my favorite podcasts is hosted by our good friend Jesse Eubanks. And
Episode
Phil,
17.
yeah, wow,
A
there
very
you go.
well listened episode. Previously, before the most recent tally of our top 10 episodes, Jesse Eubanks episode 17 reflects on social justice. that was a top 10 episode for a long time.
Yeah, and it is really solid.
Top 10 listens, not top 10 quality. I'm saying we've had some people with very large social media followings that have came in, but yeah, no, Jesse Eubanks, he was on the top 10 for forever.
Yeah, and he does a ministry called Love Thy Neighborhood. He also does a podcast that is really excellent called Love Thy Neighborhood. So definitely check those out.
Love
So
Thy
good.
Neighborhood. If you're new here and like one of our other guests retweets got you to listen to this, go check out the Love Thy Neighborhood podcast. It's like This American Life with social justice.
Yeah, meets like the Bible and social justice. It's amazing.
Like real life stories of real people who are impacted practically by Christians who care.
Philip, before we get into this first guest response, talk to us a little bit about the questions that we ask the guests and why we ask them the two questions we ask them.
So we asked our guests two questions because we cover a lot of very serious. If you're a listener to the show, you know we don't chase controversy at all.
No, it follows us.
We are not like click chasers or what Russell Moore calls conflict entrepreneurs.
We're not after that clickbait.
No, not at all. Genuinely. But because we do seek the truth, we seek to understand, we seek to promote true things and accountability and things like that. If you look through our library, there are a number of topics that are maybe not the most outwardly presenting as positive. So for these two questions, we wanted to focus very explicitly positively. First question was, what is something that you're currently optimistic about? And then the second question is, who is somebody past or present who encourages you and why? So wanted to get some, and again, because it's 100, like we're celebrating, being positive, like, and personally, selfishly, I'm craving a little bit of extra positivity. So hearing from some of these folks, their answers, I haven't even heard all the answers. I'm excited because I mean, when they first started coming in, I heard them all, but we've had a number come in just in the last 2 days. I haven't even been able to listen to them all. So I'm excited.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and it's super exciting just to see what those things are and just what's encouraging people and just really giving optimism in this time, especially knowing the time that we're in. It's super valuable to hear those things.
So here is Jesse Eubanks with his recording.
Hey, this is Jesse Eubanks of Love Thy Neighborhood. Okay, so question one, what's something that you're currently optimistic about? I am actually optimistic about what I see God doing in the lives of young adults. I look around the culture, and there's so many of us that are just distraught or cynical or frustrated or just sort of confused and wandering around. And even amidst, the confusion of young adulthood, I look around and I see God at work in the lives of just so many young adult Christians who are still showing up and loving their neighbors, and they're still hopeful. So while a lot of the rest of us can get very sort of pessimistic, I just look at these young adults and I just see hope. I see them trying to be faithful, love their neighbors, step into hard situations, follow Jesus, and it gives me a lot of hope for the future. Okay, question number two, who is someone past or present who encourages you and challenges you and why? Yeah, so this week I've been thinking a lot actually about my pastor, Dr. Jamal Williams. He's pastor of Sojourn Church Midtown in Louisville, Kentucky. And I think that Jamal is just an incredible man. He's been a great friend to me, but also he's a man that just models faithfulness amidst so many cultural pressures. Our church is located in Louisville, which is the city where Breonna Taylor was shot and killed and murdered. And for Jamal to have led our church through conversations around that and doing it in such a nuanced and thoughtful way, when there is such a temptation to jump on talking points and bandwagons, and instead for him just to just gently call us back to what does it mean to be people of both justice and grace, to be people who love the gospel but also want to see the gospel play out in culture. So I just greatly look up to Jamal.
All right. Man, I love what Jesse had to say about the young adults and the folks coming into the Love Thy Neighborhood ministry.
I'm always encouraged, man. I follow him on all the different types of socials, and you see, because I mean, you hear on the podcast the most story-worthy stories, but like just to seeing the individual that college kids who are just giving their own testimonies, seeing the stuff they're involved in, I really, really love seeing whenever they tell their stories about what they've learned through the program.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a good reminder about God being at work. There's so many places, even though, there's a lot that's broken, there are churches where there's good ministry happening. And so just remembering that and remembering people who are submitting to the grace of God in their life and that is flowing out to other people in love and in kindness. And we hope that this show is an expression of that in some ways too, of our love for the church and for God and for the world to show in the things that we talk about and the kind of way that we approach the material. I also love to shout out for his Pastor Williams there. That was pretty dope.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know what my life is going to look like in 15 years or so, but if my kid was ever interested, like I'd happily send him over to Louisville to get involved in that.
Absolutely. There's much value to be gained from Love Thy Neighborhood. So if you're in Louisville or want to go to, absolutely check out Jesse Eubanks and Love Thy Neighborhood.
Yeah, that would be cool if we could farm some people to go out there. And
that's the host. Hey, Jesse, sponsor the podcast.
Hey,
listeners send our children to you.
Yes, there you go. Hey, man,
Absolutely.
this would be some life-changing experiences for sure.
For sure. But hey, really quickly, we want to also share our favorite episodes. We've done 100 episodes.
That's still kind of wild.
That's a huge milestone. And honestly, I'll go first. And really quickly, my favorite episode was really the one with Kyle Strobel. Kyle Strobel
very nice.
came on and talked about the way of the dragon and the way of the lamb. And personally, and I'll go real quick, I want to go into ministry and I have a desire for that. And that episode actually brought a level of conviction and sobriety to that pursuit, to where it was like, I need to stop and make sure that my heart is proper where I want to go in the future as far as its ministry for Christ. So that was an incredibly impactful episode, and that was one of my favorites. So if you have a time, go back in the back catalog and listen to that episode for sure.
For sure. I mean, just to add my, 2 cents on that, the thing that's really cool about every time we've sat down with Kyle is that
teaser. We got a Kyle episode upcoming here.
You just feel like it feels like sitting down with a sage of the faith in a big way. Like,
very much so. Like,
it just feels
wears
different.
He's not that old, but he wears the professor pastor hat very humbly and also very, very well.
Yeah. Like, he has a good sense of humor. He's a funny guy, but like there's just a depth of spiritual life to him that you literally feel just in a conversation with him. And it's crazy. So. It's a joy to be with him. And really excited to bring more. So up next, we've got Courtney Ellis.
You were absent for that one, if I recall, right, Trev?
That's right. Yeah,
she was a referral from KSP, who we kind of connected with.
Yeah, she had a wealth of information, and
she had a really fun book.
Oh my gosh! And her conversation was absolutely just encouraging to all get out.
And she's been a fun social media friend since.
So here's Courtney Ellis.
Hey, this is Courtney Ellis, author of Happy Now and Uncluttered. I am currently optimistic about the art that is coming out of the past few years we've all lived through. I've seen some just incredible poetry and music and textile art and painted art. I think we are all believing different things. We've all been given different perspectives on things, and I'm so amazed at some of the work that artists big and small, well-known and lesser-known, are putting out after what we've all experienced collectively and individually. The artists, and I include poets and writers and podcasters in that group, are really, really, really giving me optimism about the future, about the work of God in the world, and how we are gifted by God to be creators ourselves. Someone who encourages me when I am having a really rough go. There is no one who lifts my spirits like Annie Dillard, whether it's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek or An American Childhood, or my favorite thing she's ever written, which is an essay called Total Eclipse. You can find it online. She weaves in stories about the natural world and the work of God and our place in the universe in ways that give me such hope, drive me to be a better writer, a better Christian, a better person of faith, a better parent, a better friend, because she speaks the truth so beautifully. So I'm an Annie Dillard fan.
Great to hear from Courtney Ellis there. And I know I kind of missed getting to interact with her on that show, which is kind of a bummer, but it's great to hear her here. And I love the sentiment of throwing podcasters in with artists.
I know, right? That was very generous.
That sounds pretty good. But art is definitely
we are
something.
Creators.
That's true.
We are regular guys. We've created well over 100 hours of
this is
trying
weekly.
to be as objective as I possibly can, like decently high quality content, I'd say.
Hopefully,
I would say so.
I'd put us up. Like, I'm genuinely proud of our whole catalog, really.
We keep the audio
every
listenable.
now and then something will make me think of like a segment from our first 12, and I'll go back and check it out, and I'll be cringing, getting ready to go back, and I'm like, it's not as smooth. Like, we don't have everything as down, but like those first 12 weren't bad. Episode 1 has come back. Thank you, listeners, and thank you everybody who shares the show. I think enough people have, just out of curiosity, gone back to check out episode 1. Episode 1 has popped back up in our top 10 list.
That's the one we talked about Ben Shapiro's John MacArthur interview, right?
Yeah, those two cool guys.
Right? Don't they know? Yeah.
Two very cool, normal guys.
Another thing I like about what Courtney said is kind of how it focuses on art. And like, that is something that we've kind of wanted to focus on and bring up here in the podcast. So like, going back to Jesse Eubanks, he called us at one point to, on a call with us.
I remember
the Bizarro Theo Bros, which is kind of interesting in a way. Like we definitely try to shy away from the Theo Bro realm in a way, but at the same time, we are guys who talk theology. So there's a sense in which the description is kind of apt, but one place that we are very bizarro about it is really prizing art in humanities and like literal art. We've had an artist on the show. We've talked to illustrators.
We've had several artists on the show.
We've talked to illustrators, but then we've also talked to poets and hip hop artists, and
we've talked to a verified art prodigy.
This is true. So, yeah, I just love that. Like, God works in those ways as well. Like, it's not all didactic and theologians and all this stuff, but it's artists and musicians.
Yeah.
And I love that. Podcasters, too.
Absolutely. And beauty and those kinds of things, creativity, is a part of how we are to interact with creation and humanity. And so with conversations with Kina Aragon or Josh Tiessen, it's just been these kind of conversations that really hone in on what's important. And so we're not just throwing theology at you, but it's really this understanding of all elements of life are important to God, and we ought to engage into it. So it's actually been super fun for all the way up to 100 episodes.
Trev, I'm looking at 2 here. I might cheat and pick 2 episodes for my favorite. I might pick a favorite, because one of them that I was thinking, I think I might pick a favorite substantive cinema and then a favorite non, because we've had a lot of substantive cinema. I'm the cinephile of the podcast. There's one of those I want to shout out, and I think I've got my non. Okay, I'll hit two. The first one, I'll hit Substantive Cinema. It's like if you're a movie person, you really should check those out. I also have a letterboxed list of all the shows we've covered. I'll throw that in the show notes too, hopefully. But the one that I really, really just loved, I went back, I've listened to it a couple times, was our Matrix Resurrections episode with Eugene. Just because I had no expectations. I didn't want a new Matrix movie. I only really loved the first one. At the time where 4 was announced, I was like, whatever. They're just milking this thing. Like, because everything's getting sequels and reboots and legacy spin-offs and all these things. So no expectation. I saw it and I was like, do I love The Matrix 4? And then deep diving on some interviews and some other podcasts. Like I went back and now I'm kind of a fan of all of them. So just that was a fun journey for myself to go through. And then Trevor and I vibing so hard on The Matrix, and Vince and Eugene kind of being on the other side of it. That was just a lot of fun. So that's my Substantive Cinema that I wanted to spotlight. And then the other one, I think I'll pick, because I mean, we've talked about favorite episodes previously, and you guys can look at those. I really love the propaganda episode.
Yeah.
That brother I have listened to for well over a decade. I've seen him mature and have different focuses and go through different experiences, and just getting to sit down and talk with a guy who I've admired and enjoyed, like that was wonderful. But what he brought, I really love where he's at right now with his Terraform project. Terraform the People was one of my top albums last year, and that was just a wonderful conversation about the things that are the most prominent on my mind right now. It's like art, culture, and honesty, and justice, all these things. I love that episode of Propaganda.
Amen. Absolutely.
Well, then, speaking of Eugene, next up is Eugene Park.
Hey, what's up? This is Eugene. I am a friend of the pod here. I also host my own pod with 2 other friends called Off the Pulpit. I'm a pastor in the Bay Area. I believe these guys asked me what I'm currently optimistic about. I'm not much of an optimist. I'm actually a pessimist deep down inside. So as a pastor, I guess a non-churchy answer is I'm very optimistic about the Golden State Warriors. It is currently May 5th, Thursday. You know, if you're living in Memphis, I know David French is from Memphis. I don't know him personally, but yeah, that's a dirty team. No, I'm just kidding. Optimistic about the Warriors. I'm also optimistic about, on a more serious note as a pastor, just about, I'm Korean American. I'm very optimistic about the Asian American church. I feel like we are at a boiling point, unprecedented moment, whatever you want to call it. It sounds cliche, but it is true. I'm a second generation Christian, and on a bigger narrative, I feel like Asian Americans are finally trying to realize and get to who we are and what that means. And it doesn't mean to try and be white. It doesn't mean to try and be black. But I think it just means trying to figure out who we are and embedding our cultural heritage. And that plays into our faith too. So I'm optimistic about that. Another question these guys asked me is who's someone who encourages me and why. Again, as a pessimist, it's hard. But I guess I'll give 2 pastoral answers. A pastoral answer and a secular answer. Someone that's been really helpful and encouraging me in a weird way is Dallas Willard. If you don't know him, he's a pastor. He's a philosopher. He's also not with us anymore, but I believe his approach to Christianity, to simple things like spiritual practices, is very refreshing to hear, especially in living. I'm in the Silicon Valley. I live in a very fast-paced, busy environment, and reading him is very refreshing because all he reminds you to do is just to slow down and be with Jesus. And that sounds cliche, but it is so true. And another person that has been encouraging me recently is an author by the name of Derek Thompson. I believe he writes for The Atlantic and also The Ringer, but he is doing excellent work just kind of figuring out our cultural moment at the moment. So he's been really encouraging. And last but not least, I should add, there's a pastor also. I got to add a lot of pastors. There's a pastor by the name of Mark Sayers in Australia. I can say he's a good friend. I think he would be okay with that. He's a good friend of mine. And I think his approach just his sociological knowledge and just him as a lead pastor is really helpful, especially for me as a pastor in the West Coast. So that's it. Hope that helps whoever's listening. I love these guys. It's been fun to get to know them and even personally meet some of them.
That was Eugene Park, pastor and writer. And Vince, actually, you linked up with him in real life, right?
Yeah, I was actually in San Mateo, and then I went down to Palo Alto to meet with Eugene, and the conversation, we got coffee. It was absolutely amazing, and the man is full of wisdom, and so I absolutely appreciate and still hold that conversation to heart. So shout out to Eugene, because man, you're a solid guy.
Podcast bringing people together.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Trev, what's your favorite episode? Or episodes, if you want to cheat like me.
Yeah, I mean, I might cheat in a different way.
What was your favorite substantive cinema? Just throw away.
Oh, favorite substantive cinema would probably be A Hidden Life.
Nice.
Just because it's become one of my favorite movies.
I
still like. There are times where I'm still like,
since you missed that one,
y'all have to hear this. Like, I'll play the opening thing where we do the painter.
Good.
And we like condensed it down. Y'all have to. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched A Hidden Life and listened to our episode, or at least listen to like the opener of the episode.
Yeah, listen to the opener, because that's what hooked me. I'd never seen The Hidden Life, and then you said, "Hey, just listen to this part."
Just listen,
and I was absolutely mesmerized and hooked by it.
Yeah,
so please listen to that opener.
It's so okay. That's a little bonus, and then I'll cheat a little bit by saying one of my favorite episodes. It's really hard. It's like picking your favorite kid. You tell them all. My favorite. No, actually, but I like to pick the ones where it's the substance host doing the substance thing. You know what I mean? Like where, because the whole idea of the show is that it's gonna be about things of value, and we're gonna have nuanced conversations. We're gonna talk about things in a true way that isn't. As much as possible, we're trying to avoid bias, like at the same time understanding that some of that is unavoidable. So like just speaking clearly about where we're coming from. But anyway, yeah, approaching things with nuance. And I think one of the ones that we approached recently that I think continues to have value, even to some degree outside the church, but I think especially in the church, around some of the folks that I'm hanging out with, is what we did on manipulative sermon tactics. So like that's a really interesting episode where we got to think about a complex topic and bring some stuff at a lay level, like at a level that you don't have to go to seminary to understand what we're talking about. You can just listen and understand, but it could give you insight into the next time you're at church.
Really, mass communication in general. There was a lot of really good stuff in there.
And ways that people kind of, even unintentionally, I think that was the cool thing about it too. Like, it's not just about people, there's so much about disinformation and people deceiving you and all that kind of stuff out there. But this was about people subtly putting the authority on themselves, maybe without even knowing it. So how to see through that, how to understand how that happens, and then even how to avoid some of that as someone who, like, if you're in a place where you're trying to minister, you're trying to be someone who can bring a lesson or bring something from the scripture. And so I think there's so much value in stuff like that. And to people in so many different places, when you have a nuanced discussion, you bring a perspective on something, you're telling the truth fearlessly about things because Christ is the truth. And like, it doesn't matter that we're pulling the curtain back on, some of the things that happen in the places of power in the church. Like, Christ is the one who's in power. And so we don't have to be afraid of that. We don't have to be afraid to tell the truth about how things are.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So I like that. I think there's so much value in stuff like that. And I think in some ways it represents the heartbeat of what we do at the Substance and why we call the podcast The Substance.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that the Substance really embodies, is this at least seeking to be this non-biased voice of truth. Because ultimately we are not seeking to side with a particular group or tradition. It's ultimately saying, God is true. And if that's a true and objective statement, then we are committed to truth. And so that means if there is lies and deception within the Christian tradition or within the secular tradition, we seek to identify those things because ultimately we are advocates as well as individuals who are committed to truth.
Yeah.
And that's a value add because you're not going to come here and get your rhetoric from your tribe. You're not going to get that from us.
Yeah.
We're not subscribed to a tribe unless that tribe is Christ.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting about that is when most of the time when you hear that out in the world, people talk about, oh, we're about the truth. It comes from a place that's very typically closed-minded and adverse to questions and exploration.
Oh boy. The people who I hear that from, have no interest in critical thinking.
And so I think a lot of times, like, if you were a listener and you heard Vince saying that right now and you felt like, oh, I don't know then about these guys, they're all about truth. Like, know this, that like for us, the very fact that we're about truth means that we're open to perspectives. And like we're open to listening to people. Like you can look around at
that
people
is a good disclaimer
on
in
the
this day and age.
podcast,
That is true.
and like
we've got
but we do it in an interesting
variety.
way. I think we do it in an interesting way, Philip, because like we're like we've fundamentally at the end of the day, we believe the Bible. We believe the Bible is true.
Correct.
And we believe that it has knowable truth. And like
correct.
Just those things alone typically don't go along with folks who are also willing to listen to folks.
It's true.
And engage with folks who are outside their traditions and have non-Christians on their show and have people who are deconstructing on their show and have people, you know, and talk through
or even care about social justice, really.
I mean, yeah, if you want to set the bar real low, yeah, for sure. And so I think that's, you know, that's when we call the substance because we're yes, we stand in some sense like Vince is saying, legitimately we stand on the word of God, but we don't pretend like we've got that all figured out in a way.
Right. We are not perfect individuals.
That we can't listen to other folks, you know, because we know we need to explore our own biases because we know ways in our own lives, our own biases that we thought were truth kept us from the truth. In different ways.
If we say God is inexhaustible, yet I've got it down. Like that's just such like when you think about it, that's just such a foolish, prideful position to have.
The point where you get to saying, I am done thinking about this thing, then it's like you've abandoned the understanding of who God is.
Vince, before we get to our next guest, just throw away here. What was your favorite substantive cinema recording experience? Don't want to leave you out of that.
So my favorite substantive cinema actually was when we first had Eugene Park on with Get Out.
Nice.
I think
that's a good one.
Aspects and
great discussion.
The visions that he brought, as well as just the conversation itself, was absolutely just on point, and I really appreciate that conversation. So if you guys have the time, go back to episode 62, Substantive Cinema, Get Out with Eugene Park. That is absolutely gold.
And he didn't Jesus juke it, but like talking about a minority's experience in like a white evangelical church and tying it to that movie, I was like, no, this was pretty good.
Yeah, he did absolutely phenomenal. That's a great episode.
Yeah, it was a convicting one. All right, guys, and up next for you, we have Corey Nathan. You'll remember him from one of our recent episodes. He's the podcast host for Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other, and had some really awesome conversation with us around his Jewish upbringing and coming to the faith. And anyway, you can check out that episode in the back catalog. Here's Corey Nathan.
Hey, this is Corey Nathan with Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other. And I was so grateful to be on the Substance Pod. And I'm encouraged by the Substance Pod. I'm encouraged by the work that y'all are doing on the Substance Pod. I'm encouraged by other content creators like the fellas who are producing this stuff because we're having more nuanced conversations. I think that folks who are having the nuanced conversations, the folks that aren't just like really like extreme this way or extreme that way, they're the ones who are the silenced majority that I think speak for the rest of us. But there's a bunch of them. There's the independent media platforms like Substance, and there's others who have a little bit of a bigger audience, like say the Dispatch or Politicology or any number of other places that I think are just doing great work. And that's what I am encouraged by. And I was so grateful to get to know the fellas on the Substance Pod. So I'm looking forward to this coming year and the year after that. And I just think the folks who are interested in nuance, the folks who are interested in having conversations across our differences and appreciating each other across our differences and celebrating each other across our differences, and understanding the nuances of any given situation, that's where we're at. And the extremists and the folks who are, just all about hyperbole, they got enough of the airwaves, and we can forget about that. But we can focus on the folks who are finding common ground and finding more nuance and finding more beauty amidst our plurality, while we are still sticking to that which we believe. So this is all encouraging to me. And again, I'm Corey. I'm just one particular dude, Corey Nathan, and I do talk politics and religion without killing each other. TP and R pod on all the socials, and politicsandreligion.us, politicsandreligion.us. And hope to connect with y'all soon.
Man, Corey giving us our flowers, man.
Man, this is nice. We should make 100 episodes of a thing more often. Just kidding. This is a lot of work. This is amazing. I love doing this. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I super appreciate it. I think, I love his call out there on the independent platforms that are bringing nuance.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's everything we were just talking about. Like, it's so many of these conversations, I think about just the political conversation that's going on right now, and like so many of the takes are pre-canned. It's just like,
yeah,
you already know what the take is going to be. It's just all one thing or all another thing, and there's so few voices out there, and like, actually, it's kind of these two things at once. I used to say, Philip, was like, we're gonna walk in the middle of a fight of two different people and like, basically call them both out, and then we're gonna start getting beat up by both sides. That's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and not that we are the arbiters of truth or whatever, but like it's, I don't know, our culture, our political talking heads have kind of weaponized a number of things. Like it's really hard to have substantive TMTM conversations on these things.
Yeah.
So moving on, we want to do what have we learned, guys? What have we learned in 100 episodes of podcasting? Trevor's learned how to make a podcast.
Man. I've learned how much Philip sniffles in an hour. I can almost quantify that for you.
That's true.
But yeah, we've learned about audio stuff, but I think we've also learned a lot about the faith, about listening to people. I've learned about prayer from Kyle. I feel like I've learned a lot about ministry and life from like Kyle, and learned things from these other guests. So I think those are maybe a shotgun of things that I've learned.
Yeah.
What have I learned?
Yeah, and I've learned how, on the BTS side of content creating and the design of certain graphics in the website, that's been challenging but also fun. And so that's been awesome. From the content that we've had, honestly, I've overall have learned there are people out here that love Christ. And in loving Christ, it's not always what a particular party or group or tribe says. This is how you love Christ. And seeing that dynamic of the nuance and people understanding, like, hey, Christ sometimes exists in the gray and in the middle, and we still ought to serve him there. That's something that I don't think I would have learned being outside of the content that we do with the substance, because culture's telling us it's either this or it's that, and there is no middle. And the substance has definitely taught me and shown me, and I've learned that it's not that black and white, and I've been appreciative of that lesson.
That's good. Phil, I'm gonna throw a guess in here, and then we can hear from you about what you have learned. But let's hear from Alexis Busetti.
Internet friend of mine.
Yeah.
I met her on some podcasting stuff. She's got a wonderful podcast. She is exclusively guest based. Every week, she's got a great guest, and almost all the time, she reads like an entire book.
Yeah, she's a beast.
While being a mom and a student and engaged in ministry. I truly don't know how she does it. Wonderful show. You guys should all subscribe to. That makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's Alexis.
My name is Alexis Busetti, and I am the host of That Makes Total Sense podcast. And I had the pleasure of being a guest on the Substance Pod. I believe it was episode 72, reflecting on podcasting and restorative justice. So one of the things that I'm so optimistic about right now is that the Christian community around me is asking really tough questions. But I'll say this, I think we have always asked difficult questions in the Christian community. But what I'm seeing right now that I'm so optimistic about is that we're asking those questions in the context of community and in the context of spiritual formation. And what I mean by that is I'm contrasting that with some of my own upbringing, where discipleship in the American evangelical church that I grew up in was really focused on having the right answers, intellectualism, what is happening inside of our heads, what's happening inside of our thoughts. And I am so ecstatic to hear people reflecting on their feelings, on the emotions of other people, on the experiences of themselves and of other people, and that we're just embracing new ways to know ourselves and God and others. And so it makes me really just thrilled to think about the future of Christianity and the communities around me, and what that might look like for our future in spiritual formation. Thinking along those lines, some of the people that have inspired me, I've been feeling a little nostalgic lately for each of my 4 grandparents who, the most recent one who passed away hasn't even been 2 years ago now, or I guess it's been just a bit over 2 years. And I just think about how each of them really just seemed to know who they were, and that they were so generous with themselves. Each of them poured themselves out in ways that were so special. And as I reflect on my life, like, so much of who I am is because of their generosity in giving me themselves. I think particularly of my grandma Joy, who passed away most recently, and with tears in her eyes when she was in her last few years of life, my grandmother telling me of times that she had with the Lord, just him continuing to shape and form her in her late years when she had been a Christian for, 60 plus years, just still having those experiences where she was hearing from the Lord and she was responding to his call. And that is so inspiring for me. I want to be that kind of woman. I want to be that kind of Christian. I want to be that kind of a friend and mother and hopefully grandmother someday. I want to be that kind of woman. So thanks, guys, so much for the opportunity to answer these questions. Thanks for celebrating people and what we're optimistic about and what we're inspired by. And thank you for inspiring us.
I very much resonate with some of the things Alexis says, just as far as listening to others, talking about each other's experience and kind of coming together. This is a I guess it's an old cliche, and it's not like, oh, I've learned this. Like this was a thing that I was ignorant of, and 100 episodes of The Substance taught me this. But really, experientially, just seeing this true over and over and over again. We've had over 40 guests on the show from a wide variety of backgrounds and educations and current practices. Like Trevor said, we've had some people who are not saved. We have some people who are deep into the deconstruction. We have some people who are artists. We have some people who probably think that like art's a waste of time. And all these things, I really see personally that like actually like we are a lot more alike than we are different, especially when we're trying to seek after God and to honor him. And that's not a trite thing. Like you can say that and not think about it, but like that's a real thing, and that's encouraging, especially as we are living through a divisive time. Like there are people who are profiting and who are seeking to benefit from putting people at each other's throats, things like that. But really, like when we sit down with somebody, like at the same table, like we really do have a lot in common. And when we humble ourselves to substantively and truly engage with one another, there's a lot of good that, like, frankly, if we approach it humbly, it's not that hard to get to some really, really wonderful stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Some good lessons that we've learned while we were on the show for sure. And hopefully you all who are listening with us got to enjoy some of that as well. Next up,
Who we got next, Trev?
friend of the show, Mitch Wiley.
And my buddy Mitch, who we've become a little bit. I've talked on the show before how I have remote movie nights with some of my homies from Florida.
Nice.
I haven't quite done that with Mitch, but Mitch and I text regularly about the movies we're watching. So I don't really have a ton of those, as many of those as I'd like true cinephile friends in my life. So glad we connected with Mitch here.
Awesome. Here's Mitch.
Hey, this is Mitch Wiley, and I am a hospice chaplain from Louisville, Kentucky, and a film lover, aspiring film critic of sorts, who been on a couple times to discuss some substantive cinema. To the question, what is something I'm currently optimistic about? This is a difficult question these days. It seems like the spirit of our age is one of cynicism and pessimism, and I am optimistic about certain technological medical things. I think medical technology in general I'm optimistic about. Cars, self-driving cars, electric cars. But my answer is going to be art and storytelling, specifically Christian art, Christian storytelling. I've been slowly reading through Art Plus Faith by the great Christian artist Makoto Fujimura, as well as Cameron Anderson's book, The Faithful Artist. And those are both really wonderful visions for how Christians can make and engage with good art whether that's, visual storytelling like film and paintings and, the art of poetry and prose and music. I'm just very optimistic about the church pivoting to art and storytelling as a way to share our hope of Jesus and to mirror the Creator, and being able to hear from different types of Christians, whether that's people of different races, ethnicities, countries, perspectives. I think it's one of the best results of social media and the internet, places like YouTube and Spotify and things like that, is hearing from so many different artists and people and types of people. And I believe that in our time we need art more than ever, and that is something that Christians can offer, as truth, beauty, and goodness, the transcendentals. And I recently read a apologetics book, Why God Doesn't Make Sense in a World That Doesn't, by Gavin Ortman, is what it's called. And he asserts that beauty and storytelling are the new apologetics in our world today. Really not new. This has been an apologetic of the church for a long time, and people are often very persuaded by good music and good stories, which is certainly an idea that Lewis and Tolkien would shout amen to. And I think that art and storytelling that reflects truth, goodness, and beauty is a great apologetic for the Christian faith and the beauty of the global church. And I'm very optimistic about the global church in general, our brothers and sisters in Asia and Africa specifically. But as a film guy, I can't, not point to a couple of recent, really good, artful films about faith and religion that I think you guys have done a couple episodes on anyway, but that'd be Martin Scorsese's Silence, Paul Schrader's First Reformed and Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life. Those are all really good visions of thoughtful theological films that kind of avoid the didactic black and whites that so many faith-based films of recent decades have been plagued by. Someone that encourages me and why. Two of my friends and I have been reading through Justo Gonzalez's 2-volume church history overview, The Story of Christianity, which is a great introduction to church history. And I think that it has helped me understand our heritage and past saints, and specifically the Christians in the first 2 centuries. These are men and women who did not have the privileges that we have as in the democratic West. And, you know, they were thought to be cannibals because of the Eucharist and incestuous because they called one another brother and sister. And they were quite literally thrown to the lions because of their love. And the way that they endured that with dignity, grace, and courage and honor, I think that's a reminder to me that no matter what may come in the future, we have a faith heritage of those who have gone before us and have fought the good fight. They finished the race, and specifically one being Justin Martyr, who used preaching and writings to engage with the philosophy of his day and again, truth beating goodness.
Man, I love what Mitch has to say about church history.
Yeah.
You know, he echoed a lot of the comments as well that we've already talked about with art and artists being encouraging. But I love him calling out Justo Gonzalez and his history of the Christian church. And I think, man, there's so many times when we're thinking through an issue and referencing church history seems, you know what I mean, is such a good anchor point.
Mm-hmm. We absolutely need to understand the men and just individuals who have engaged in the Word of God and the study of God in a way that we might not be able to, because they had a lot less distractions. They didn't have Netflix or HBO or Hulu. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of distractions that we have that hinder us from being able to engage.
They had a finite amount of content to engage with back in the day.
I think it's foolish for us to think that because we are more technologically advanced, that they were more primitive than us. And I would say they are more studious than us. And so we ought to bring a high value in church history and the individuals who took the time in days and months and weeks to study the things of the Word of God.
And it's also a very common thought, but I mean, you just think about it, like it really helps demystify a lot of the things that seem so complex and overwhelming now.
Absolutely.
Like Ecclesiastes, like there truly is nothing new under the sun. Like
Absolutely.
The heart of all of these previous controversies and councils and just lives of ministers, all these things, like these are the same things.
Amen.
They're the exact same things.
Absolutely.
And not to minimize them or us, but yeah, it's of extreme value. Okay, I'm going to try to think of some other, because I mean, I've got a lot of memories being the guy who does a lot of the, or almost all of the guest relation and promo. Like there's a lot of cool stuff that's happened. But one of my favorite things, it's in my memory because it was so great, but also my 3.5-year-old son, Ezra, loves this. Like literally tonight at dinner time, out of nowhere, he's like, "Daddy, can you play the Substance where he says, 'Philip, you stinker'?" And that was from Tim Whitaker.
Yes.
The bonus question we asked with Tim, where he told the wonderful story about getting pulled over by the police. So listeners, go check that episode out. Sometimes if you're new to the show, if you haven't listened to it, we've started doing this, I don't know, maybe in the last 20 or so episodes. And we have varying degrees of success. But I've started reaching out to friends, family, associates of the guests, and just trying to get a fun question towards the end to not do like a gotcha or embarrass them, but just kind of throw them a curveball at the end. And we had Tim Whitaker on from the New Evangelicals. It's a very interesting platform. A lot of people trying to go through, process trauma, and really try to figure out where they are spiritually and move forward. His wife gave us a wonderful, I won't even lay the whole thing out, but
it's
his
the best question ever.
Reaction to hearing the question out loud, like his brain just kind of like short circuited for a second. He's like, "What?" Like Who told
Who
you
did
that?
you get that from?
So good.
And my son
Such a
will every
good
now and then
moment.
just be like, I want to listen to that part again, Daddy.
Yeah, that was so
So
fun to edit too. I'm
that
like,
was
this
a
is
wonderful
such a good
memory.
moment.
Mhm.
Ugh.
So that was one of my favorite. Like, as we were recording, I'm like, this is a Hall of Fame substance moment.
Absolutely.
There have been a few different milestones of this. There have been a number of packages that I've received at my house, or Trevor used to receive at your house, where it's just like,
Mhm.
shipped to the Substance Podcast, like Banner of Truth, Crossway, like Multnomah, like places that like I think we highly esteem
Mhm.
Christian book publishing and just books and literature and quality writing, and having these people send them to us for like, hey, send this out there to your audience. Like, that will never get old. I mean, it might get old. Like, my wife is like, hey, we can't keep all this. I was like, I know. But I just love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my favorite memories. So, in doing our episode with Carl Strobel in The Way of the Dragon, The Way of the Lamb, I actually wanted to, hey, I'm pursuing ministry. And after that conversation, I was like, hey, put the pause on it and really assess your heart. And Kyle was able to generously contribute his time to actually have a phone conversation with me and like actually assess, hey, where's your heart? What are you pursuing? And here is the advice that I would give you as a person who's pursuing ministry as a full-time gig. And that is invaluable to me. And I am just, that's one of my favorite memories. It happened obviously off air, but it was just one of the things where it's like he cared enough to be able to have that conversation with me. And I think I will hold that until the end of my days. So that's one of my absolute favorite memories. It's just the generosity and the compassion and humbleness of Kyle Strobel, even off the air.
Yeah.
The relationships have been awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that like that's, when I think of memories, the categories of memories that come up to my mind are like the behind the scenes stuff with you guys, like making the podcast for one. Like Philip, I remember sitting down with the notes app and just like running through stupid show titles and like trying out a whole bunch of things and throwing spaghetti at the wall until we found stuff that worked, and like just doing that hard mental work to try to get good stuff, getting the
Or when
line
we sat
up,
down at that coffee shop in Kansas City where we were where we worked out biblical, thoughtful, human, engaging the culture without the culture war.
Yep. Yes.
I remember that.
That was super dope. Or like Vince hanging out and like working in GarageBand on the theme music.
Oh yeah, when we were in our relaunch stage. Okay, bro.
That was
memories.
Fun.
Okay, listeners, check out our special announcement episode between 12 and 13.
It's a hard listen.
I loved the Substance. I loved the Substance very much when we were
canceled.
Yeah, when we were basically forced to put an indefinite pause on it by our previous leadership, like that didn't feel
Much love
great.
to them too. Much love to them too.
For sure.
Yeah,
that didn't feel awesome for a number of reasons, and I think Trevor expected me to push back on it hard, but I was like, no, like I mean, I want to work through this. I want to talk to them. Want to be respectful. I'd love to win them over. Like, I still kind of saw it as like the power dynamics were pretty jacked up, but like we were trying to like honor them. I was like, we're not going to be like, no, we're doing it anyway. It's like, no, we need to stop this for now. Let's figure it out. But when it became clear that it wasn't like, let's slow this down and figure it out, it's like, we just stop. We want you guys to stop and be quiet and be happy with that. I was like, okay. And then when Trevor came to me, I feel like Trevor probably thought that I was going to be the one bugging him to be like, let's do it. Let's start again. Let's start again. I was like, okay, like it's just done for now. Like I imagine and hope that it'll come back one day. But when I got that call from Trevor going, hey, like after we had both left that church, he's like, hey, I've been thinking about it. You want to start doing it again? Like, yes, let's do it, man. That was great. That was great.
COVID, it was a really opportune time. Like I think it was good
Which
for
helped us
us.
also get so many guests.
Yeah,
I think COVID helped us land some very big
Yeah,
guests in
and it
that
was a
initial
good
run.
time to reflect. It was a good time to talk about that stuff. It was a good time to be getting substance out into the world.
I think people needed that too. Like some of
Yeah.
the initial emails
Yeah.
we got from people thanking us for the stuff we were putting out, like people were even more disconnected than they are typically.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, but yeah, I think it's just those moments. Like I even think about us working out some of the hard stuff on the website. Like trying to figure it out, trying to get it all like stuff.
Still
stuff
doing that
hasn't-
here
Yeah,
and there.
and stuff hasn't always been. It hasn't been easy, but we've worked through it and we've grown. And our relationships together as we've kind of worked through stuff and learned more about each other.
Yeah.
To me, like that's I think of like the
valuable.
memories of the podcast. That's what sticks with me.
Absolutely.
So our next guest segment here, this is Eric Nevins. He's the founder of the Christian Podcasters Association, somebody who's given me and us plenty of support. He was actually, if you've been with us for a while on social media, he was the reason we were featured last year in like April or June in Podcast Magazine.
Yeah.
We were shouted out as the spirituality podcast of the month. He advocated for us on that, so that was pretty cool. He's a wonderful guy. He's got his own show called Halfway There.
It was my
Phenomenal
dad's
show.
favorite episode. One of my dad's favorite episodes was with Eric Nevins.
Heck yeah.
Check
And
that
then
out.
went
And
and-
that's on thesubstancepod.com, so go check it out.
There you
That
go.
was a great show. Here's Eric.
This is Eric Nevins of Halfway There and Christian Podcasters Association. And I've been podcasting for 6 or 7 years, and I love to support the guys at The Substance however I can. Something I'm currently optimistic about is the way that even though the world feels a little bit weird and there's a lot going on that feels out of control, the reality is it's never been more possible to connect. We feel more sometimes disconnected and disjointed, particularly in the United States. But when you look at all the ways that we can connect, like podcasting, like new media, used well, social media you can do that as well. And I actually think if we have the mind for it, if we have the imagination for it, connection has never been more possible or more likely even than it is today. And I think that's a really positive thing. And I love the direction that it's going as we look into Web3. There's a lot of ways to be scared about that, but also use a little imagination, squint a little bit, and it could be really, really cool for connection. So that's something that I'm optimistic about, particularly one other piece to that. When we think about how you can share the gospel around the world, it's going to be a really exciting time. So that's great. Question 2. So who is somebody who encourages me and why? Past or present? So I think I really have done a fairly deep dive study on the founders of the United States and every United States president from Washington to Jackson. And even without just picking one of those guys, they're all inspirational in their own way. What's interesting about each of them is they were all very, very flawed, but they were also all very, very inspirational. And I think what that proves is that you can be yourself. You can be who you are, warts and all, faults and all, and still accomplish great things. You don't have to be perfect. And I think one of the things that I particularly get stuck on is feeling like I have to have it all together before I can take the next step. But you can look at somebody like, let's just look at George Washington, for instance. He did some great things, obviously. Like no one had ever won a war and then laid down power. But George Washington did that. And then he was elected president, could have been president as long as he wanted. And he laid it down. He walked away from that. And that's admirable. Certainly unique in the course of history. And yet he also owned slaves, and he did things like rotated slaves in and out of Philadelphia so that they wouldn't be able to declare freedom. And that's sad. That gives me hope, though, because it means that I don't have to be perfect, right? Like you can be who you are, warts and all, and still make your mark.
Yeah, so that was Eric. And yeah, I mean, it's it's a wonderful thing to be a part of this new media landscape.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. It's exciting. And we really hope to be of value here. So yeah, thank you, Eric.
Awesome. Finally, before we get to some bonus guests that we, some of these are going to be surprise here at the end. Because we don't even fully know everybody.
We're still waiting on a few of them.
Yeah, we're gonna wait on a few, but
there might be a little.
Think about that. I think it's good. We can go ahead and think about the future. What do you guys want for the future of the substance?
What do you think? Next 100 episodes?
The next 100.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll be honest. For the next 100 episodes, man, I just hope that we can get more listener engagement because, especially for our topic toss-ups,
listener-based content is great.
We love it. Like, if there's any thought in your mind that the Substance Podcast wouldn't really care about it, dispel that from your mind. We want to know any individuals following us on Facebook, on Instagram, on our Anchor. If you think that there's a subject that we ought to talk about, we are more than willing to research that and seek to talk about it because we absolutely just love the audience engagement. And so it's a huge thing that I would want to see in the future. It's just you guys help us continue. So if you want us to see us continue, absolutely 100%. Let us know what you're thinking and what you'd like us to cover.
Yeah, I think that engagement is so key. And I think another thing, as far as what I'm thinking in the future, the next 100 episodes, is finding ways of getting more of us in there too, like more substance into things, putting more research, just finding ways to continue bringing high quality material. I know we're all super busy guys.
Do a series. Yeah. We've talked for a while about doing like 3 or 4 episodes. And I mean, so we've kind of done that. Like you can, I guess, bank some of our justice episodes together, but be like, okay, I'd love to do like, we're going to do 2 to 4 episodes specifically, maybe not all together, maybe intersperse them with other episodes. So it's not like a month straight or 2 months straight of like one topic. But I think that would be pretty cool to do.
Yeah. And I think, more to come on this in the future, but we're figuring out ways as we're busy folks to
busy independent creators.
Find ways to continue and find even increase our ability to bring good research, deep level research, nuanced thought, and substantive conversations to you guys. So stay tuned.
I mean, if anybody
in the future,
if anybody listening is a believing, faithful person who's an eccentric millionaire who loves podcasts, you can exclusively be our patron if you'd like us to just crank out these things at a wild level. But these things really do take time, and we are going to try to maybe figure out something to where we can really put as much effort as we want to in some of these deeper topics.
Yeah, and we love what we do. And so we are also very busy guys. So we just ask that you be gracious to us, you be patient with us, and continue engaging with us.
Also, I'd say moving forward, couple of things like goals for the future. Definitely have Brett back for more Terrence Malick.
Always.
Make Trevor watch more Terrence Malick.
Yeah, always.
Would love to get Esau McCauley. He's got that new kids book out, so maybe we can rope him in for that. Maybe knock out some more of our
dreamless guests.
Dreamless, yeah.
More of our dreamless guests. And for me personally, I'll just put this out there. I've told Jesse, I've told Rommel and Keena, and I've told a few of the other folks. I'd love to have the substance, whether it's myself, Trevor, or Vince, I'd love to have the Substance podcast be on the back of a book endorsement.
Hey.
Hit us up at IVP,
awesome.
Crossway. You send us enough books, we talk about your books, throw us on. And it doesn't even have to be on the back. Put us in the open flap.
There you go.
Honestly, I just want to be able to interview Molly Music. I love that guy.
Hopefully we can get a Reconstruction person. I really would love to have somebody who's an expert in the Reconstruction period come on.
That'd be dope. Awesome. Well, here are some more bonus surprise. We didn't even know who we were
Probably.
getting. Really dope.
Do we have at least one of these?
Really dope guess. Yeah, I think we'll have at least one of these.
Okay, 1, 2, 4,
15.
5.
Who knows?
Perhaps. Who knows? Hope you enjoy.
Hi, this is Josh Tiessen. So, the first question, what's something you're currently optimistic about? For me, one thing I'm really encouraged by is just seeing the younger generation, and this isn't to disparage against older generations, but I see among younger people a real desire to have a more holistic expression of faith. And so I'm just really encouraged by young people who want to participate in caring for the environment or caring for our own bodies through natural wellness, natural health, and also just a real desire to transcend a lot of the political polarization that's happening in our society. And unfortunately, in the past, oftentimes what happened is that, Christians, because they weren't secular, they would polarize in areas like the arts, and so they would retreat from the cultural sphere. And so I just see young people wanting to engage the arts, and I see just the church in North America more and more wanting to pursue excellence in this area. And so this is what's really giving me hope right now, and also that we're not falling for some of the political ideologies of our day. A teacher that has really inspired me is John Mark Comer, and he talks a lot about these spiritually forming practices that we need to incorporate in our lives. And I just really see the arts or embodied living in general as being a really encouraging theme that I see happening in my generation as a younger person. So someone who has really encouraged me these days is my colleague Terry Glaspie. He's the author of the book 75 Masterpieces Every Christian Should Know, and also Discovering God Through the Arts. And what I really love about Terry is that he has such a appreciation and wealth of knowledge for art history, and he highlights the stories of people like Caspar David Friedrich, who was this 19th century German romanticist painter who just went through terrible atrocities and losses and grief, watching his own brother drown at a young age and multiple family members die, and yet his faith was what sustained him through these kind of existential crises that he then painted about in his haunting landscapes. And Glaspie also tells a story of artists like Vincent van Gogh, who also wrestled with his faith. And I think it's really important because in the 21st century that we're living in, we of course have our own battles that we're facing these days, and especially for artists of faith, we need these stories of artists from the past who also wrestled with their faith in the times that they were living in. And so I really would recommend checking out Terry's books. He is just a persuasive and winsome writer.
Hey, Substance Podcast guys. This is Hannah Chao from the Solo Network. Something I've been really optimistic about recently is actually TikTok. I tried to resist the poll to get on it, but once I did, I slowly started dipping my toes into it, and now I really am optimistic about how this tool can be used. And I know there's the fear of disinformation, and there's a lot of weirdness out there, but I do think it's such a great tool that can be used to connect people and to show joy and show life and creativity and creation care and all these things. I love sharing videos with my husband, with my kids. I show them funny cat videos, but even things about nature that they wouldn't see, flowers and hiking and all these things. And so, it's just another tool that we can use to show our kids this world, and that's something that makes me optimistic. So someone who really encourages and challenges me is the guy who runs Humans of New York. His name is Brandon. I don't remember his last name, Brandon something. But he's practically the only reason why I go on Facebook anymore. That and for random happy birthdays and Facebook messages. But I absolutely love the beautiful storytelling that he does on his website, where he really finds these stories that are so poignant, that are so compassionate and so eye-opening. I think that's something that the church can really learn from, where we try to find out these stories that are real, that are important, and yet are often hidden. Stories not just of joy, but of pain, grief, loss, regret. These are emotions that are found all throughout the Psalms, all throughout the Bible, and yet so often at church we can overlook the lives of individual people. We don't stop to celebrate. We don't stop to mourn. We don't stop to hold people, to think about them and to care about them. I think that's something that really encourages me and challenges me to do when I meet people. Am I really looking for their story? Are our churches seeking out people who maybe are afraid, but we can bring them out with the love and light of Christ? So that's something that's been encouraging me.
And that was some guests, we hope.
Yeah.
Amen.
Saying some good stuff, we imagine.
Yeah.
We're sure that they said some very good things that are very encouraging and optimistic.
There you go. Absolutely. And hopefully this has been an encouraging episode for you. I don't know if we need to fill the whole outro here. I mean, people have heard our stuff. But
substancepod.com.
Boom.
You are the voicemail. And I will say a plug. If you love the substance, if you value it, Anchor link in the show notes. We don't do Patreon. It's the same thing, but Anchor is who we do it through. $5 or $10 a month. Or, hey, since we're at 100, you don't need to. We had one person once give us $100. That was dope.
Hey.
But if you want to throw us a couple of bucks, $5, $10 for hitting episode 100, you can do that individually at Cash App at $the Substance Pod. And we thank each and every one of you that supports the show that way.
Absolutely. Two biggest things you can visit at thesubstancepod.com. One is our episodes page. You can absolutely leave your comments, let us know what you think about this episode, or want to just celebrate with us that we hit 100 episodes. Please just let us know what you thought about it, and even thoughts about the future of episodes that you would like us to cover. The second thing is the Blessed playlist.
Word.
We have plenty of songs and episodes that you guys can enjoy, things that we've liked, things that we've shouted out. Split Splash Warning is at the top of the page, so you'll know. But if you know, go at it at your own conscience, but we have plenty of things that you guys can listen to. That would be awesome. So visit thesubstancepod.com.
I'm still waiting for the page to literally say Splish Splash Warning with like a water emoji or something, but
it's not a water emoji, but it's theirs. It does say Splish Splash right now.
Yeah, we don't want to necessarily get into those connotations, perhaps.
Well, you know,
Trevor's
we love nuance.
I've seen some people use some very questionable emojis, like in official capacity, and it's like they don't understand emojis.
I might not understand emojis, but I do understand voicemails, and if you're with me, you can leave one at 913-703-3883. Y'all, this has been 100 episodes.
100 episodes.
100.
Share it with your friends.
Please.
Join us for the next 100.
Your enemies.
Share it with your enemies. Why not?
Share
Love your enemies.
Love
give them
them
the substance.
by sharing them the substance. Yes.
I have been your host, Philip.
And I, Trevor.
And I'm Vincent.
Seeing you next time. Saying
that we're seeing you.
Saying that we're seeing you.
Seeing that we're saying. We'll see y'all next time.
Are you gonna actually say the first part correctly?
Saying we'll see you next time
on The Substance.
We gone.
referencing church history seems, you know what I mean, is such a good anchor point.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're doing favorite moments. I have one.
You guys had no comments about church history?
Oh, sorry.
No,
I thought you were trying to sprint. You're like, "Guys, we need to sprint through this." And I was like, all right, good segment, Trev. You're like, "Do you guys care about this?"
This is Hi, you're listening to the end of the episode.
I concur.
I agree.
We got a lot more guests to play and other stuff to do, and you're like,
I'm just trying to keep it
supposed to be a 30-minute show. And I was like, oh, I don't know
we
about
don't
that,
have
but-
time for history. All right. Anyway,
completely agree. So sorry, Trev. I wasn't trying to run past it. I was trying to honor your wishes for brevity here.
I know I can't win because I just want you guys to like maybe riff for like 3 seconds and you like both talk for like 10 anyway.
History good.
Yes, history. Like it.
That's all, dude. That is on point. Thank you, Philip. I haven't laughed out this week at all.